Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. We might actually have a story leak this time, and I'm surprised nobody has found it. I'm convinced I figured out the overall narrative of what we'll be seeing in Baldur's Gate 3 based on what I discovered. Recently, a friend of mine who was helping me dig up information happened to notice that Larian has a press kit available for download on their website. This had me curious because normally companies don't have these available, right? So I got curious and downloaded it. The file had nearly 3 gigs of stuff in there. Things like high-res screenshots, gameplay recordings, trailers, etc. But what actually caught my eye was there is a PDF file in there called a fact sheet, something that we would usually ignore. Now, this fact sheet only had 2 pages, but it contained something that I personally hadn't found anywhere else on the internet before. And I wondered, how many other people knew this was here? The small things first. We get further reiteration about a choice to embrace dark powers or fight against it. Presumed over 100 hours of gameplay. Of course, 15 races and sub-races with 8 classes accompanying them and more on the way. Relationships, evolving campsite, countless permutations in story, etc., etc. Most of the basic knowledge we have got reiterated in some way on the fact sheet. But what is actually important here? What little things got hidden in here? Here is what stood out to me on page 1 in the order that I found them. Speak with the dead to learn new facts and uncover secrets. Is this Larian trying to put importance on us working with Jor Ragzlin and getting information from that illithid corpse? Or is there more we haven't seen yet? What makes this important? This sentence just felt oddly placed. Layered crime system that holds you accountable for your actions and affects your reputation. Hooray, we're getting the usual rep system we had in the old days, as well as the crime system that Larian had in DOS 2. But why is it a layered crime system? How complex are they planning on making it? Now that's just from the first page. Everything else there seems pretty standard. It's everything that I read on page 2 that has me really thinking. Where do these connections lead? You are burdened with a great power devouring you from within. How far down the path of darkness will you let it take you? The fate of the Forgotten Realms is on your party's shoulders. Will you carry it to salvation or descend with it to hell? Carry it to salvation or descend with it to hell? At the beginning of all of this, I had to wonder if the ilithids were making a big push to spread throughout the galaxy once again, starting with conquering Toril. The only inkling of hell and devils I could think up was during my analysis of the new logo. After all this time between the hint at Gale's past, us meeting Raphael, the confirmed connections by Sven to Descent into Avernus, and the other recent campaigns, I have to wonder, instead of something along the lines of 80% ilithids and 20% hell, are we instead closer to something like 50-50 between the two? How big of a part is hell going to play once August hits? Dare I say, actually, maybe something like 20% ilithids, but 80% forces that are larger than life? We are in the Forgotten Realms, a land of many races and multiple divine beings. We know that the world is in turmoil. Armies of evil rampage along the Sword Coast, and refugees swarm to Baldur's Gate. Amid all the chaos, a new cult is on the rise, the cult of the Absolute, seeking to overthrow the old order. Its shadowy network is chipping away at the Forgotten Realms foundations. Baldur's Gate itself will be the first to fall. That is where we come in, the players, and we're off to a very inauspicious start indeed. Out of nowhere, we were kidnapped by mind flayers. A tadpole was put in our heads. We barely survived the crash landing of an autoloid, and we find ourselves stranded in the middle of an inhospitable wilderness. We discover we have only a few days to get rid of the parasite inside, or we'll become mind flayers ourselves. As we desperately seek a cure, we discover the tadpole gives us godlike powers, and we find ourselves on the center stage of a complot hatched by none other than the Dead Three, the gods of murder, tyranny, and death. Our journey will not only take us back to the legendary city of Baldur's Gate, but through and beyond the Forgotten Realms. It is a journey of survival, ours, and all of the Forgotten Realms. I really liked these two murals. There's definitely answers here. The part about the armies of evil certainly seems like foreshadowing to me, with refugees swarming to Baldur's Gate sounding like an awfully specific thing. Perhaps a nod to the Elturel refugees from Descent into Avernus? And what is the Old Order? Chipping away at the foundations of the world seems to me like the Cult of the Absolute is trying to worm its way into every society and organization across the planet. But if everything is being affected, why is the city of Baldur's Gate first? My current train of thought with that is between the Murder in Baldur's Gate and Descent into Avernus campaigns, the Cult of the Dead 3 operating out of Baldur's Gate seems to be a crucial factor. The quote pretty much gave it away, but the question is, how are they doing it? And lastly, there's this becoming a journey through and beyond the Forgotten Realms. It didn't specify Toril, or the Sword Coast, or any one specific name. Taking this at face value, are things going to become larger than life once again? I think yes. And to that end, I think I have figured out a good chunk of the overall story purely based on these 3 murals. That's right, there's actually a third mural. One that you might have missed. During the last stuff Larian showed off, we got nice action shots of some of the characters removing a weapon from their backs, standing in very specific locations in front of very specific things. One of these shots contains the third mural. But before I keep going, I just want to point out, in these action shots, I still have a gut feeling each of these means something very, very specific. But at the moment, I can only talk on half of them. And afterwards, I'll endeavor to the best of my ability to weave the story that Larian might have created for us. We see Gale in a ruined and long abandoned saloon temple overrun by undead. We have what I assume is a player character or an NPC in front of the third mural, another player character or NPC in front of a site used by the Emerald Enclave, and lastly, Shadowheart in front of a statue to the dark goddess Shar. This deity opposes the light and is also Shadowheart's chosen deity. But between this temple and the saloon temple we just saw, Shar's temple looks fairly pristine. And when we bring a screenshot of this into Photoshop and change the levels a little bit, we get a better look at everything in the room. The only things that seem out of place are these 2 objects. Now, this begs the question, what are these things? What I find quite curious though, is that it's 2 of our companions that are seen in these 2 temples of the 2 sister deities, who greatly oppose each other in every facet of life. These 2 goddesses have been fighting each other since the beginning of time pretty much, with Shar in particular constantly going out of her way throughout history to make her sister Saloon suffer and subvert all of her followers. One thing that's kind of sticking in the back of my mind is that all of these action shots, I think these are probably paths for us to follow as players. Different routes that we can take throughout the game, different factions, different ways to handle things. But the question is, how? Now this initial discovery, I'm afraid, is all the time I have for this first video. Part 2 is where I shall reveal how these murals and a little bit of heresy paints a picture of the events to unfold in Baldur's Gate 3. Make sure to click subscribe if you like this video. This way you can join me on this journey towards Baldur's Gate 3, uncovering every little thing we can find. You can also find me on Twitter at McAllik_. Until next time, stay safe out there. I can't wait to show you all part 2.